The current parliamentary power struggles in London and difficult negotiations between the EU and the United Kingdom are reminiscent of the Brexit drama of 2019. The EU should draw red lines and be patient. At first glance, history seems to be repeating itself in the Brexit negotiations. The United Kingdom formally left the EU on January 31st, 2020. However, it is still in a transition phase until the end of the year, and if no agreement on future relationship is negotiated by then, there is a risk of a no-deal Brexit, an exit without a trade agreement. In autumn 2019, the negotiations ended in an agreement despite or perhaps because of the political drama. Boris Johnson made big concessions on a special status for Northern Ireland in order to allow as much freedom as possible for the rest of Britain, which former Prime Minister Theresa May had been unwilling to do. But he sold it as a diplomatic success and won the British parliamentary elections under the motto "Get Brexit Done." Prime Minister Boris Johnson has now put Northern Ireland's border back on the agenda in parallel to the renewed stagnant negotiations, with his draft law on the British internal market. This is intended to enable the British government to break its obligations from the exit agreement with the EU, if necessary, by undermining the special status that has been agreed for Northern Ireland. In Westminster, Conservative Party leaders announced that they will vote against the government's bill, but most of them didn't. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson threatens the EU that a no-deal Brexit would also be a good result for London. The political framework for the current Brexit negotiations, however, is different than in the first round. The legal flexibility of the exit negotiations, in accordance with Article 50 of the EU Treaty, enabled Brussels and London to avert the impending no-deal Brexit with a total of 3 deadline extensions. According to the exit agreement, the current transition phase could only have been extended once, with a resolution by July 1st, 2020, and that hasn't happened. The British government deliberately let this deadline pass in order to increase the pressure on the current negotiations. Although a no-deal Brexit would now hit a British economy that was massively weakened by the corona pandemic. Without an agreement, there will be no alternative on January 1st, 2020. No, it's 2021. Unlike last year, there is no longer a parliamentary counterweight to restrict the Johnson administration. Before the new elections in December 2019, Johnson did not have a majority of his own, and a fragile coalition of Labour, Liberal Democrats and Conservative rebels forced him to extend it to prevent the no-deal Brexit. Now, the Conservatives have a clear majority of 364 to 278 MPs. In the course of the parliamentary power struggles over Brexit, almost all moderate votes were pushed out of the Conservative group. While Theresa May was still wrestling with her cabinet about the right Brexit course, Johnson has committed all of his ministers to his tough line. In addition, leading British officials have been forced out of their posts. Most recently, for example, the head of government's legal service resigned in protest against the deliberate breach of obligations under the exit agreement. Key positions were filled with convinced Brexit supporters. The new Attorney General and Brexit advocate Suella Braverman, for example, defended the intended breach of the exit agreement with reference to parliamentary sovereignty, while her direct predecessors sharply criticized the government's plans. Despite resentment about the deliberate breach of international law obligations, including among some Conservatives, there will be no sufficiently large conservative rebellion against Johnson from the lower house or the government. And that was shown again on Tuesday when his bill, amended with his compromises, but still passed the House again. The House of Lords, in which the government does not have a majority, could stop or at least delay the controversial internal market legislation, but not prevent the no-deal Brexit. This means that there is no domestic policy correction that could dissuade the government from its tough Brexit course. Johnson can therefore credibly threaten the no-deal Brexit or even cause it willfully. The downside of this abundance of power is that Johnson must assume sole responsibility for the course of the Brexit negotiations. In view of the bad corona management in European comparison to date, he is already under domestic political pressure despite the comfortable majority. In the event of a no deal, he would have to accept an additional economic slump and increasing pressure from Scotland, which is striving for independence. For an agreement with the EU, he would have to make clear that he is willing to have concessions and sell them to his hardliners, and that will be difficult. Because his sharp rhetoric has meant that a course correction, such as the withdrawal of the controversial clauses from the internal market bill or compromises with the EU in trade negotiations, would now be seen as a defeat of the government. It is still unclear whether the latest threatening gestures from London are primarily negotiating tactics or rhetorical preparations for the blame game. That is, the passing on of responsibility in the event that the negotiations fail. This negotiating situation demands a lot of strategic patience from the EU. Despite all the domestic political theatre in London, it is still in Europe's interest to negotiate a trade agreement with its direct neighbour Great Britain. Breaking off the negotiations by the EU would also play into the hands of the hardliners in London who want to hold the Union responsible for a no-deal Brexit. At the same time, the EU cannot accept that a treaty that has already been negotiated and ratified is deliberately broken. It should therefore be ready to continue discussions, but tie the conclusion of the negotiations to the fact that the clauses in the internal market legislation that run counter to the withdrawal agreement are removed from the bill. There will be a lot more political drama from London in the next few weeks. The EU should not be deterred by this and stick to its clearly communicated line. And if you now want to know more about European politics, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you in the end screen, right next to your chance to subscribe to my channel. And now my channel is also with membership, and I do have Patreon now. You find all links in the description. Just have a look. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß and viel Plezier.